Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
This all started back in elementary school when I was actually friends with this girl. We used to hang out all the time, share our lunches, and have sleepovers. But something changed when we hit middle school. Maybe she thought being mean to me would make her cooler or help her fit in with a popular crowd. Whatever the reason, she turned into my worst nightmare. The bullying started small. She'd ignore me in the hallways or make snide comments about my clothes. But it quickly escalated into something much worse. On the school bus, she'd sit a few rows behind me and whip coins at the back of my head. Those quarters and nickels would leave little welts that stung for hours. When I'd turn around to glare at her, she'd just smile this cruel smile and look away like nothing happened. Then came the prank phone calls. She'd have her male friends call my house and ask me out on dates, only to burst into laughter in the background when I'd get excited and say yes. I'd show up to whatever meeting spot they'd suggest, wait for an hour, and then realize it was all a joke. It wasn't even the humiliation of being stood up that hurt most. It was hearing her cackle and laugh echoing in my head every time it happened. But she'd point and laugh at me in the hallways too. I always thought that only happened in cheesy teen movies. But there she'd be with her little group of followers, literally pointing at me and laughing loud enough for everyone to hear. I tried to walk faster or duck into the nearest bathroom, but the damage was always done. Other kids would stare and whisper, wondering what was so funny about me. When high school rolled around, I was hoping for a fresh start. New building, new classes, new people. Maybe she'd finally leave me alone, but fate had other plans. First period Spanish class, and guess who was assigned to sit right next to me? Yep, her, and right behind us, her two best friends who had joined in on tormenting me over the years. I felt my stomach drop when I walked into that classroom. There she was, already sitting in her assigned seat talking to her friends like she owned the place. When she saw me approaching the desk next to hers, she rolled her eyes and made some comment to her friends that made them all snicker. I wanted to ask the teacher if I could switch seats, but I was too embarrassed and too scared of drawing more attention to myself. The bullying continued even in class. While the teacher was writing on the board, her friends would throw spitballs at the back of my head. They'd reach forward and yank the bobby pins out of my hair, throwing them across the room so my hair would fall in my face and look messy. Every time I tried to fix it, they'd do it again. I felt so small and powerless, like I was invisible to everyone except when they wanted to torment me. A few weeks into the semester, our teacher announced we'd be doing a group project. She divided us into teams of 4 based on our seating arrangement. My heart dropped when I realized I'd be stuck working with her and her 2 friends. The project wasn't huge, but we had to write a script in Spanish using specific vocabulary words and verb tenses we'd been learning. Then we'd perform it in front of the entire class. I tried to be a team player at first. During our planning session, I suggested some ideas for our script. I thought maybe we could do something about ordering food at a restaurant and use the vocabulary from chapter 3. But they just stared at me blankly and continued their conversation about weekend plans. One of them was talking about what happened at some party the night before, while another was gossiping about how desperate some girl was acting around a guy. I tried again, suggesting we could do a scene about shopping for clothes so we could use the colors and sizes vocabulary. Again, they completely ignored me. This went on for the entire planning period. Every time I tried to contribute, they'd act like I wasn't even there. By the end of class, nothing had been decided and nothing had been written. The next day, I approached them again and asked if we should meet after school to work on the script since it was due next week. She just shrugged and told me to figure it out. One of her friends said I seemed to have lots of ideas anyway, so I should just handle it. That's when it hit me. They expected me to do the entire project by myself, while they got to put their names on it and take credit. I looked over at our teacher, hoping she might intervene and I could see this look of sympathy in her eyes. But she didn't say anything. Maybe she wanted to see how we'd handle it ourselves. Or maybe she just didn't want to deal with teenage drama. So I went home that night and wrote the entire script by myself. But here's where I got creative with my revenge. Since I was doing all the work anyway, I decided to have some fun with their parts. I made sure my lines included all the required vocabulary words and verb tenses. I followed every single rule on the assignment sheet for my character, but for their parts, I made their lines complete nonsense that didn't follow any of the grammatical rules we were supposed to demonstrate. Her character was supposed to be ordering food at a restaurant, but I wrote her lines so she'd be asking for things like Blue Thursday with extra homework instead of actual menu items. I made sure she wouldn't use any of the required vocabulary or correct verb conjugations. Her friends' parts were just as ridiculous. One was supposed to compliment the food, but ended up saying things about how geometric and purple everything tasted. They never bothered to read through their lines beforehand. They just assumed I'd done everything correctly since I was the one actually working. The day of our presentation, they grabbed their scripts right before class started. When it was our turn to present, I went first and delivered my part perfectly. I used all the required vocabulary, conjugated every verb correctly, and spoke with confidence. The teacher was nodding approvingly. Then it was her turn. She started reading her lines about wanting to eat Blue Thursday with extra homework sauce. I could see the confusion spreading across her face when she read the nonsensical words I'd written for her. But she was already committed to reading it out loud in front of everyone, so she kept going. She talked about how mathematical the restaurant was and how the ceiling tasted like purple music. By now the whole class was trying not to laugh. Her friends were reading their equally ridiculous lines, stumbling over words that made absolutely no sense. I just stood there with a perfectly innocent expression, like I had no idea why their parts sounded so weird. Our teacher's reaction was perfect. Her voice got louder and sharper when she asked what exactly she thought she was doing. She wanted to know if she had even bothered to review her lines before coming up there. She said the work was completely unacceptable and showed no understanding of the material they'd covered. She turned bright red when she realized what had happened. She looked at me with this expression of shocked betrayal. But what could she say? That she hadn't bothered to participate in writing her own lines? That she'd expected me to do all the work for her? She was trapped by her own laziness. The teacher told her she could expect a failing grade on this project. She said maybe next time she'd take the assignment seriously instead of wasting everyone's time. The snickers from our classmates weren't even hidden anymore. Everyone could see exactly what had happened, that she'd tried to coast by on someone else's work and got called out for it in the most public way possible. For someone who had spent years humiliating me in front of others, getting a taste of her own medicine felt incredible. After that day, she pretty much left me alone. I think she finally realized I wasn't going to be her punching bag anymore. We finished out the semester without any more incidents, and thankfully we never had classes together again. Fast forward 12 years, and I hadn't thought about her in ages until recently. I was scrolling through social media and somehow ended up looking her up out of curiosity. Her profile was full of pictures of this glamorous lifestyle: expensive cars, fancy handbags, beach vacations, top-notch restaurants. She looked like she was living her best life, but something seemed off about it all, so I did a little more digging. A quick search of public records revealed a very different story. Turns out she's been sued multiple times by credit card companies, apartment complexes, and other creditors for unpaid bills. She can't even afford to pay her rent on time. Now, I don't wish financial hardship on anyone, and I know plenty of good people who struggle to make ends meet. But when someone is buying Louis Vuitton bags while getting evicted from their apartment, it says something about their priorities. It also says something about how fake their perfect social media life really is. I used to be a typical 14-year-old girl full of energy and dreams. I spent hours on the soccer field chasing after the ball with my friends. We had dreams of winning championships and maybe even playing professionally one day. But then everything changed. I started feeling this unusual fatigue and weakness in my legs. At first, I thought it was just from an intense practice, but it kept getting worse. Soon, even walking short distances became a struggle. My parents took me to countless doctors, hoping for a simple explanation. After numerous tests, the verdict came in. I was diagnosed with Guillain-Barré syndrome, a rare neurological disorder where your immune system mistakenly attacks your nerves. It causes weakness and, in severe cases, paralysis. For me, the progression was swift. Within weeks, I couldn't walk at all. I remember sitting in the doctor's office when they told us. My parents were devastated, and I felt like my entire world had crumbled. I went from using crutches to a walker and finally to this wheelchair I'm in now. It wasn't just about losing mobility, it was about adapting to a completely new reality. It's been a year since then, and my dad had taken me out for a stroll in my wheelchair. We were enjoying the fresh air and trying to find some normalcy in our lives when it happened. When we walked along the path, I heard this impatient voice behind us. The woman huffed and demanded that we move, pushing past other people in the park and completely ignoring basic courtesy. My dad and I moved to the side to let her pass, but that wasn't enough for her. She forcefully shoved my dad aside, causing him to stumble, and then rammed straight into the back of my wheelchair. The impact was sudden, and I went flying out of my chair, scraping my knees on the pavement. When I struggled to get myself together, she looked down at me with this sneer on her face. She told me that disabled people should stay out of the way because we ruin everything for everyone else. Her words cut deep, adding insult to the physical injury I'd just endured. My dad looked furious when he stood up. He confronted her angrily, telling her she had no right to treat me that way and demanding she show some decency. But Karen wasn't done. She decided to double down on her cruelty and lunged at my dad, thinking she could intimidate him into silence. She raised her hand like she was going to strike him. That's when my mom appeared out of nowhere. She'd been nearby buying something from a vendor when she saw what was happening. Without hesitation, she delivered a powerful punch straight to Karen's face, leaving her stunned and bloodied. The park went silent for a moment when everyone processed what just happened. My mom stood tall, ready to defend her family. She warned Karen to never come near me again, her voice filled with protective fury. Someone in the crowd must have called the police because soon we heard sirens. The officers arrived, took statements from witnesses, and assessed the situation. Karen, now nursing a bloody broken nose, was escorted into the back of a police car after we made it clear we were pressing charges. About a week passed from the incident, and one night we were startled awake by our car alarm blaring. It was well past midnight. We rushed to the window and saw a figure near our driveway, a teenage boy with his face hidden under a hoodie, frantically slashing our car tires. Fear gripped us when we fumbled for the phone to call the police. Meanwhile, the boy moved to our mailbox. Before we could react, he doused it in gasoline and set it on fire. The fire department arrived quickly and managed to contain the blaze before it could spread further, but our mailbox was completely burnt, and the bushes around it were scorched. The next morning, the community was in shock. The police examined security footage from neighboring homes, and it didn't take long for them to identify the teenager responsible. It turned out to be Karen's son, likely seeking revenge for his mother being arrested. An arrest warrant was issued immediately. When days turned into weeks, the authorities eventually tracked him down and arrested him. When he stood before the court, the prosecution presented evidence of his destructive retaliation. The judge was unmoved by any potential sympathy and delivered a stern sentence. Karen's son was sentenced to time in a juvenile detention center. Like mother, like son, I guess. I'm 25 and married my high school boyfriend 5 years ago. We've been inseparable since we were 17. He's always been my rock through everything. When my parents divorced when I was 12, when my dad remarried 2 years later, and especially when I had to adjust to suddenly having a stepsister who was only a year younger than me. My stepsister and I never really clicked. She always seemed to resent that her dad married my mom, and she made it clear that she thought I was trying to steal her father's attention. But we kept things civil for the sake of our parents. When my husband and I found out we were expecting our first baby, we were over the moon. We decided early on to keep the baby's name secret until birth because we thought it would be a sweet surprise for everyone. We'd seen too many stories online about family members trying to influence name choices or even stealing names, so we figured this was the safest approach. Around the same time, my stepsister announced she was also pregnant. What are the odds, right? During one family dinner, she mentioned she was considering the name Mary Grace for her baby girl. I thought it was pretty, but it wasn't exactly what we had in mind anyway. My husband and I had already decided on Mary Kay months earlier. It was a combination of both our grandmother's names, Mary from his side and Kay from mine. It felt perfect and meaningful to us. When our daughter was born, we were exhausted but happy. We posted the announcement on social media with her name and a sweet photo. Within an hour, my phone was ringing. My stepsister called me, absolutely furious. She demanded to know if I was serious about naming my baby Mary Kay, claiming that was the name she had wanted. I was confused and reminded her that she had said she liked Mary Grace, which was a different name. She huffed and said it was practically the same thing, accusing me of disrespecting her since she had picked a Mary name first. I tried to explain that the names were different and that we really liked Mary Kay, telling her it wasn't meant to upset her. But she raised her voice, saying it did upset her and that now she had to pick a new name, and it was all my fault. Then she hung up on me. I was sitting there holding my newborn daughter, completely bewildered by what just happened. 20 minutes later, my stepmom called. My stepmom called with an accusatory tone, saying she couldn't believe what we had done and calling it childish. When I asked what was childish, she said it was keeping the name a secret just so we could have our way. She went on to tell me that Mary Grace was the name my stepsister wanted after her grandmother's death. I was genuinely surprised and told her we had no idea about that, explaining that we just thought it would be a nice surprise for everyone. She said dismissively that it wasn't nice at all, and that now my stepsister was upset and they were all disappointed. I defended our choice, pointing out that Mary Kay and Mary Grace weren't the same names. She brushed me off, saying whatever and just telling me to know that I had upset my stepsister, and that was on me. Then she hung up too. For the next few days, I kept getting texts from various family members. Most of them were taking my stepsister's side, saying I should have been more considerate. A few people pointed out that the names weren't actually the same, but they were drowned out by the others. My stepsister posted on social media about how some people are fake family members who pretend to care but really just want to steal your joy. It was pretty obvious she was talking about me. The breaking point came when my stepmom called again a week later. She told me that my stepsister had decided on a completely different name now because of what I did. When I asked what name she had chosen, my stepmom said Catherine Grace, explaining that she was honoring her grandmother with the middle name instead. I had to sit down. Catherine, which is literally what K is short for. So now she was using my grandmother's name after making this whole fuss about me using a name similar to hers. I pointed out the irony to my stepmom, asking her to help me understand how my stepsister could be upset about Mary Kay being similar to Mary Grace, but then turn around and use Catherine, which is exactly what K stands for. My stepmom said that was different because Catherine was a completely different name from K. I explained that K is literally a nickname for Catherine, like saying William and Bill are completely different names. She told me I was being ridiculous and said I should just be happy that my stepsister found a solution despite what I put her through. I was shocked that she was saying I put her through something, especially since she was now using my grandmother's actual full name after all this drama. My stepmom just said that my grandmother doesn't own that name and anyone can use Catherine. The irony was unbelievable. The same woman who had been lecturing me about being considerate was now defending her daughter using my grandmother's name. But here's where things got interesting. My dad, who had been staying quiet during all this drama, finally had enough. The next family gathering was at my dad and stepmom's house. My stepsister brought her new baby Catherine Grace, and I brought Mary Kay. My stepsister made a big show of introducing her daughter and explaining how the name honored her beloved grandmother, Grace. My dad spoke up with a funny tone, saying he could have sworn she had told everyone she was naming her Mary Grace a few months ago. My stepsister said that plans changed and she decided Catherine Grace was more meaningful. My dad then pointed out that it was interesting how Catherine had nothing to do with the fact that K is short for Catherine, which happened to be the name she gave me grief over. My stepmom shot him a warning look, but my dad wasn't backing down. My dad continued, saying it seemed pretty convenient that she threw a fit about Mary Kay being too similar to Mary Grace, but then turned around and used the exact same name that Kay represents. My stepsister insisted it wasn't the same thing at all. My dad asked if it wasn't, pointing out that she had made me feel terrible for honoring my grandmother, but then went ahead and used that exact same grandmother's name. He said that seemed pretty entitled to him. My stepmom tried to change the subject, but my dad wasn't finished. He asked when exactly my stepsister had mentioned that Mary Grace was after her grandmother, because he had been to every family dinner for the past year and never heard her say that until after Mary Kay was born. The room went quiet. My stepsister's face turned red. She said defensively that she shouldn't have to announce her reasons to everyone. My dad replied that she expected everyone else to read her mind, and pointed out that now she was using Catherine, which was incredibly hypocritical given her reaction to Mary Kay. My stepmom started getting defensive, but other family members who had been quiet started speaking up. My aunt mentioned that she thought the drama was overblown from the beginning. My cousin said she had never heard about the grandmother connection either. It became clear that my stepsister had made up the grandmother story after the fact to make me look worse, and now she was using my grandmother's name while still acting like she was the victim. My uncle, who's never been one to hold back his opinions, looked directly at my stepsister. He said he wanted to understand the situation, asking if she got mad at me for using Mary Kay because it was too close to Mary Grace, then changed her name to Catherine Grace, which uses the full version of Kay, and was still acting like I was the problem. My stepsister started to stutter, saying it wasn't the same and that it was different, but she couldn't finish her explanation. My uncle asked her different because what, pointing out that she seemed entitled to police what everyone else names their kids, but she could do whatever she wanted. My stepsister got up and left the gathering, taking her baby with her. My stepmom followed, shooting angry looks at everyone. Later that evening, my dad pulled me aside. He apologized for all the drama I had to deal with and said I did nothing wrong by naming my daughter Mary Kay. I thanked him and said I was starting to think I was going crazy. He told me that my stepsister had always been jealous of me, and this was just another way for her to try to make me look bad. He said the fact that she ended up using my grandmother's name just proved how hypocritical she was being. It's been 6 months since all this happened. My stepsister still barely speaks to me, and my stepmom acts cold whenever I'm around. But honestly, I don't care anymore. Mary Kay is thriving, and my husband and I are happy with our choice. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.